There should be a base salad. Have it over here. Okay, here we go. Base salad.
Yeah.
If one makes a sukkah between trees and trees serve as its walls, it's valid. Those who are engaged in the performance of a mitzvah are exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. Ill people and their attendants are exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. What does that mean, though, exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah? For the whole thing, from the first day?
So hold on. Okay, so let's go through this because we didn't get to learn this yesterday. Okay, so making a sukkah with trees as the walls. So we're using trees as the walls. Now, there's an important proviso over here that the trees must not move apart in a regular wind. Right? If a regular wind blows, the mechitza still has to stand. Okay, so if the wind blows and now you've got this massive gap in the wall, that's not a wall.
But we're talking about the wind blowing, the trees moving. You're talking about the trunks of the trees moving, like small trees, or you're talking about the leaves?
The definition of the mechitza. Okay, so if you have a mechitza that is the definition of mechitza we saw in Erevin.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In Erevin, it's got to have less than 3 tefachim in any gap.
Right.
Vertically or horizontally. Okay. So I mean, look, the most likely instance where you'd have this is a hedge. That grows together nicely, and you don't see any gaps. I mean, okay, if you look inside a hedge, you can see gaps through the hedge, but nothing's bigger than 3 tefachim.
Right.
But let's say you've got a bunch of pine trees, planted one. Okay, they can also grow together quite nicely, but it depends on how thick it is and how far apart they're spaced. If the wind blows and now you've got a gap that's more than 3 tefachim between them, that's not a mechitza, and that's really what you got. So what you could do is tie the branches together. You could just tie the branches together, and even if there's little bits of airspace in between, as long as it's less than 3 tefachim between them, that's still fine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so that's basically the eitzah if you want to make a mechitza of trees for whatever reason. Okay.
Okay.
And then shluchim mitzvah paturim min sukkah. So somebody's osek b'mitzvah is patur min mitzvah. That's our general rule. We saw this in brachos, right? Or somebody when u'pekuris hameis that you're patur from kriyas shema and from tefillah and whatever while you're osek in the funeral. And the same thing is over here. The shluchim mitzvah is that if somebody's on the derech or they're going out to pidyon shvuyim, I think is the case for us in the Gemara. Is that while you're busy, you don't have to go out of your way to try and find a sukkah. If, however, you can do both, then you should do both. We also saw that in brachas, right? Where you've got and we're going to see that in Chazara soon when it comes to the mace. That during the funeral, those people who are needed to carry the mace, they're patur from kriyas shema, but people are just walking alongside. If it's coming to the Zman for Kriyas Shema, then it should step aside, say Kriyas Shema, and rejoin the procession. We say, because it's easy to do that, and we say, but for Amidah, you don't, because because Amidah is it takes time. So anyway, that's basically the din that we've got over here. That if you're busy with the mitzvah, then you patur from going out of your way to find a sukkah. But if you can manage both, then do both. Okay, and the cholenu misham shehen. So again, if somebody is sick and they can't sit in the sukkah because it would make them uncomfortable, then again they're patur from the sukkah because it's got to be because kein taduru. If somebody wouldn't go and inflict discomfort on themselves to live in their house, so it's not. It's not something that you have to go and do, even though it's uncomfortable, and especially if you're a chole. So the chole is allowed to go inside, and if somebody's taking care of the chole, then again they're osek b'mitzvah.
Right. Okay. Right. And he says we can eat and drink casually outside the sukkah if you're in this position.
That's snack.
Right. Well, we're talking casually, right? Once they brought Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai some cooked food to taste. And to Rabbi Gamliel, they brought 2 dates and a pail of water, and they said, "Bring them up to the sukkah." But when they gave Rabbi,
so even though these are snacks, these Tanaim were machmir on themselves, and they said, "Look, I don't want to eat anything outside the sukkah. It's a chumrah."
Mm-hmm.
And the Gemara and the Mishnah is bringing it as a chumrah and saying it's a good chumrah.
Right. But I was thinking more of also they brought 2 dates because it's Mina that we're talking about. The dates are part of the 7.
But even so, you would be allowed to eat them outside the sukkah. The Mishnah wouldn't have to bring it to us if it was a chiyuv, because I mean obviously then Rabban Gamliel is going to take it up to the sukkah if it's a chiyuv. But they're saying this to show that this was the chumrah that he kept.
They bring them up to the sukkah, and when they gave Reb Tzadok food smaller than the volume of an egg, he took it with a cloth, ate it outside the sukkah, and did not recite a benediction after it.
That's it. It was a small amount. So there so his chumrah here was to wrap his hands in a cloth so that instead of netilas yadayim.
Right. Okay.
So that again is a chumrah. He was something less than a kavetza. He wouldn't have needed to wash his hands.
No.
Actually, less than a kazayas it should have been. Let's just see that.
Kazayas.
It says a kavetza in the Mishnah. I'm just looking at the commentary. I think there's a machlokes there about whether you need a kavetza or a kazayas to wash on.
The Mishnah teaches us the size. It teaches that the smaller volume exempted him from also washing and from reciting Birkas Hamazon. That's all it says here. It says that Reb Tzadok held the view of Reb Yehuda that one is obligated to recite Birkas Hamazon only after a meal of at least an egg beitza.
Yes.
Right, and the halakha, however, follows Reb Meir, who rules that eating an olive.
That's right. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Reb Eliezer says a man is obligated to eat 14 meals in the sukkah, 1 each day and 1 each night. But the Chachamim said the matter has no fixed obligation except for the night of the first Yom Tov of the festival only. Reb Eliezer further stated that whoever did not eat in the sukkah on the night of the first Yom Tov must compensate it for on the night of the last Yom Tov. But the Chachamim say the matter has no compensation. About the matter, it is said a twisted thing cannot be made straight, and what is not there cannot be numbered.
Right. So basically, there's no tashlumin according to Chachamim. If you missed out on the mitzvah of sukkah on the first night, that's it. It's done. And so we have this Gezerah Shava between Sukkot and Pesach because it's the 15th. Okay. Right. In both cases. So just like there's a mitzvah to eat a kazayas of matzah on Pesach night, and if you missed it, you missed it. Okay. The same thing is that you've got to eat a kazayas of bread in the sukkah on the first night. And right. If you missed it, you missed it.
That's it.
Okay. Zayin, Misha haya rosha v'ruba b'sukkah. So somebody who's sitting technically inside the sukkah, but his table is inside the house. Okay, so you got it. He's in the sukkah, but it's a small sukkah, so his table is under the roof. Okay. Shammai poslin or Beis Hillel machshirin. Machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai whether that's called eating in the sukkah. Why? Because the chashash is that he's going to be leaning into the sukkah into the house, and he's no longer in the sukkah while he's eating. Okay. Amru lahen Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, but they said that we've got a maaseh that proves that we're right. Lo kach haya maaseh. Remember, we've got a Masorah. There's a maaseh that happened. She'alchu ziknei Beis Shammai v'ziknei Beis Hillel l'gvakeres Rabbi Yochanan ben Hakorani. So there was a certain Tana called Rabbi Yochanan ben Hakorani who was in his house, and Zikanim went to meet him. He was exactly this case. And nobody said anything to him. Amru lahen Beis Shammai. So Beis Shammai said to him, "Is that the version of the story you've got, Misham Raya? You think that's your proof?" Hey, Mamrulo im kain hayisa noheg lo kiyamta mitzvah sukkah miyamecha. They did protest. You're saying that they didn't protest. I'm sorry that they did protest and said you're not keeping the mitzvah sukkah. So Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai have a departure point where they've just got a different version of the story. Okay. Nashim v'avadim uketanim paturin min hasukkah. Now this is an interesting little thing over here, because normally we'd say, okay, women and slaves. Okay, obviously ketanim are not chayiv in mitzvahs, but women and slaves are chayiv in mitzvahs aseh she'ezman grama. Okay, what's sukkah? Sukkah is a mitzvahs aseh she'ezman grama. So surely that should be the obvious thing, but the thing is that we have this Gezerah Shava with Pesach. And with Pesach, they're all obligated to eat matzah.
Mhm.
Right? So there are a lot of svaras why women should have to sit in the sukkah. And the Gemara goes into all these different reasons, but it comes out of the conclusion that it's simply a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. We just have a Masorah that women are patur from sukkah. So I mean, it does fall into the gather of mitzvahs aseh shazman grama, but the reason, why there could have been plenty of reasons to remove that, and it just comes down to halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Okay. Katan she'eno tzarich le'imo. Now, what happens if you've got a child who doesn't need his mother? And the line for that, it explains Kahati, is that the Gemara explains that if you leave the child alone at night, if he calls for his mother, does he eventually stop calling, or does he just call more and more for his mother? So that's the katan she'eno tzarich le'imo, he'll eventually go to sleep without his mother there. Okay, chayiv b'sukkah. So when you say chayiv b'sukkah, obviously this is not him being chayiv, it's his parents being chayiv in the chinuch. Okay. Maaseh v'yalda kalasa shel Shammai HaZaken. So Shammai HaZaken was very machmir on this particular thing. So when his daughter gave birth, he went and he went to the above her bed, and he removed the ceiling, the sikech al gabe hamita, and he put schach on top of her bed, bishvil hakatan, so that this baby boy would be sleeping in a sukkah. But this again is a chumrah. This is not lahalacha. Okay, because obviously a baby needs his mother. Okay. Kol shivas hayamim adam oseh sukkah sokava ubeisa arai. So the general rule is that everything should be done in the sukkah. As much as you can should be done in the sukkah. Okay, and that becomes a person's dwelling place for the chag. Yarda geshamim. What happens if it rains? Okay, so at what point are you allowed to leave the sukkah if it starts raining? Is it just like 1 or 2 drops, or does it have to be coming down hard? It's when it starts messing up the soup. Okay, it starts dripping through and getting into your food, and you're saying, "Oh no, this is yuck." It becomes uncomfortable. Mashlu mashal. So the analogy is lemah dava domeh le'eved sheba limzog kos lerabo b'shafach lo kitson al panav. It's like somebody came, the servant came to serve his master, and the master by pouring some water for him, and the master threw the water back in his face. So it's considered a negative sign if it rains during Sukkot. It's keilu Hashem doesn't want our avodah. So it's a sad thing when we have to leave the sukkah because of rain.
I heard that the Chabadniks they stay in the sukkah when it rains.
That's correct. They say even so. They say we like that. Even if you don't want our avodah, we still want to show that we want to serve you, even if it's uncomfortable for us. Okay, so that's not the halacha. Maaseh Shahaya with the chief rabbi of South Africa, Rabbi Cyril Harris. That's how it was like sitting. Went to visit Lubavitcher Sukkah, and the rain started coming down, and he got up and went inside, and the Lubavitcher stayed inside and said, "This is not
for me." I thought Rabbi Goldstein? Is he the chief rabbi?
He's the chief rabbi now. Yes, he succeeded Rabbi Harris.
That's the one person who looks like the Roan, right? That's the
one
who looks a little bit like the Roan, but the Roan looks like the chief rabbi.
At a stretch.
A stretch, I know.
At a stretch. Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. We have Yoma, and we are on we're on Chet Gimel.
Yeah.
No, right, Chet Gimel. If one ate and drank in a single period of forgetfulness, he is liable for only 1 sin offering. If one ate and did work on Yom Kippur, he is liable for 2 sin offerings. If one ate foods that are not fit for consumption or drank liquids unfit for drinking, for example, he drank brine or salted fish fats, he is not liable for a sin offering. We do not afflict the children on Yom Kippur. but we train them prior to the previous year or prior to 2 years so that they should become accustomed to commandments. And if a pregnant woman smelled food or drink and requested it, they feed her until she recovers. A sick person, they feed him according to the advice of experts. But if no experts are present, they feed him relying on his own opinion until he says enough. Okay. What did they do with the truma? With it, they would purchase daily offerings, additional offerings, and then the the omer, the 2 loaves, the pot of bread, and all of the public offerings. Those who would watch over the aftergrowth of the Shemitah year receive their wages from the funds withdrawn from the treasury chamber. And Reb Yossi says, also one wishing to may volunteer as an unsalaried watchman. They replied to him, you too admit that they must come from the public assets. I have a note here like that. Seeking. Okay, that was something else. Okay. The red cow, the he-goat, which is sent to Azael, and the strip of red wool are purchased with funds were drawn from the treasury chamber. The ram for the transport of the red cow, the ram for the transport of the he-goat, which was sent to Azazel, and the strip of wool which is tied between the horns, the water canal, the walls of the city and its towers, and all the needs of the city are funded from the remainder of the treasury chamber. Abba Shaul says the Kohanim Gedolim built the ram for the transfer of the red cow from their own funds. And what did they do with the surplus of the remainder of the treasury chamber? With it, they would purchase wines, oils, and fine flour, which they would subsequently resell. The profits accruing to the temple, these are the words of Rabbi Mishael. Rabbi Akiva says, investments may not be made with that which belongs to the temple, nor with funds collected for the poor. Okay.
Shabbos. Good base Aleph.
One who builds, how much must he build to be liable? One who builds any amount, one who chisels a stone, strikes with a hammer or with an az, I don't know what that is exactly. Drills or any amount, or drills any amount is liable. This is the rule. Anyone who worked and his work endures on the Sabbath is liable. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says also one who strikes with a sledgehammer on the anvil while working is liable, since he is as one who improves his work. One who plows any amount, one who weeds or prunes dry branches or prunes young shoots in any amount is liable. One who gathers wood, if his intent is to effect an improvement, he is liable for any amount if his intent is for kindling. He is liable for the amount of wood required to cook an easily cooked egg. One who gathers grasses, if his intent is to effect an improvement, he is liable for any amount. If his intent for animal fodder, he is liable for as much as a kid's mouthful. One who writes 2 letters, whether with his right or left hand, whether he of 1 character or 2 characters, whether with 2 inks in any language, he is liable. Reb Yossi says they declared writing 2 letters liable only because of marking, for thus they would write on the boards of the Mishkan to know which one were mates. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said we find a short name which is part of a long name. Shem from Shimon, Shmuel from Shmuel, Noach from Nachor, and Dan from Daniel, and Gad from Gadel. Okay. Okay. All right, and we are on to
Brachas by Gimel. Sorry, what am I saying? Gimel base. Gimel base.
Oh, turned it the wrong way again. Gimel base. There we are. Okay. They buried the dead and returned. If they are to begin and finish before they reach the line, they should begin, and if not, they shall not begin. Those standing in line, the innermost are exempt, while the outer are obligated. Women, slaves, and minors are exempt from reading the Shema and Tefillin, but are subject to the obligation of Tefillah and Mezuzah and to recite grace after meals. A Balkari reads mentally and does not recite the blessings before or after it. On food, he recites the after blessings, but does not recite before. Rabbi Yehuda says he blesses before and after them.
Right. So this is a bit kind of the Takanas Ezra about the Balkari, which is no longer extant. It's a case in point of a gezerah she'en hatzibur yachol lamod bo, something that the tzibur just can't handle. Okay, base.
They began piling up the ashes on top of the mound. A mound was in the center of the altar. At times, there was something like 300 core of ashes on it. And on the festivals, they would not remove the ashes from the altar because it was an adornment for the altar. And in the days of the Kohen was never lax in taking out the ashes. They began bringing up logs to arrange the fire on the pyre. But are all the woods valid for the pyre? Yes, all the woods are valid for the pyre except for that of an olive tree and a vine. However, with these woods, they were accustomed with branches of a fig tree and the nut tree of an oil tree. The Kohen arranged the large pyre together toward the east, and the pyre's face was toward the east. I'm reading that incorrectly. The Kohen arranged the large pyre toward the east, and the pyre's fire was toward the east, and the heads of the inner logs would touch the mound, and there was space between the logs, for they would kindle the chips from there.
Okay. And finally, Baba Metzia.
And so it is with two utensils, one worth a mana and one worth 1,000 zuz. If this one says the more expensive one is mine, and that one says the more expensive one is mine, he gives the smaller one to one of them, and from the larger one, he gives the value of the smaller one to the other. And the remainder should be put away until Eliyahu comes. Said Reb Yossi, if so, what does the deceiver lose? Rather, everything should be put away until Eliyahu comes. If one deposits produce with another, even if it is becoming ruined, he may not touch it. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says he should sell it to the presence of a court because he is as one who returns a lost item to the owner. If one deposits produce with another person, he may deduct for decreases. Other person, he may deduct for decreases. For wheat and rice, 9.5 kavs per core. For barley and for millet, 9 kavs per core. To spelt and for linseed, 3 sian per core. Everything depending to the measure, everything according to the time. Said Reb Yochanan ben Nuri, what difference does it make to the mice? Do they not eat whether that from much or from little? Rather, he deducts for decreases for 1 core only. Reb Yehuda says, if it has been a large measure, he does not deduct the decreases because it increases.
So that's an interesting thing here. Is that the machlokes here is, do you deduct a percentage or do you deduct a flat amount for shrinkage?
Yeah.
And I say no. The mice, the mice aren't going to eat more just because there's more food. But the rejoinder to that is no. They're wicked things. Why mice? If they see there's a lot, then they call their friends.
Very good.
Okay.
Great. Have a great day. Feel good.
Thank you very much. You too.
Oh, thank you. You see.
Okay.
You
Cheers. Have a great day.